What if Saitama never removed his limiter? As you guys already know by now, our favorite bald superhero, Saitama, is one of the most broken and insanely strong characters in all of manga and anime. This immeasurable level of strength is mostly due to the fact that Saitama is the only person in the One Punch Man universe that has removed his limiter, allowing him to tap into quite literally a limitless pool of potential, and allows him to be as strong as he needs to be in any fight and defeat any opponent without even breaking a sweat. I'm not giving you guys any new information here, I'm sure you guys already know this, but this begs the question, how strong would Saitama be if he still had his limiter? And on top of that, where would he land in the Hero Association? What would be his ceiling in the Hero Association with the strength he would have with his limiter intact? I think we have quite a bit of evidence that would show us exactly how strong he would be, so by the end of this video, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what Saitama's ceiling would be with his limiter. And if you stick around until the very end, I think I'll be able to give an exact ranking in the Hero Association that I think will be very fitting of his strength at that point. And you know, just a little spoiler here, Saitama's nobody to mess with, even with his limiter. But just before we start digging into Saitama's training and start to answer some of these questions, if you guys enjoy One Punch Man content like this, then I think you found a best friend today, because I post One Punch Man content on this channel each and every week. And on top of that, I put out chapter reviews before literally anybody else. So if you want to be the first guy in town to know when a One Punch Man chapter drops, then make sure to subscribe and turn those notifications on so you can be the first person to know as soon as something comes out. But all right, with that being said, let's get into it. So I think a great place to start is by describing what a limiter even is. I'm sure most of you probably already know by now what it is, but for those of you that don't, a limiter is something placed on every living organism in the One Punch Man world that pretty much puts a cap on their potential, and more specifically their potential strength. Dr. Giannis explains it best when he says that a limiter exists in every organism to pretty much keep them from damaging their own bodies. In other words, to kind of give you guys a real life example, you and I are capable of being much stronger and much faster than we are right now, but our brains are pretty much wired to cap our strength, cap the things that we can do to preserve our bodies. Because if we overextended what our physical limitations are, then it can lead to things like broken bones, torn muscles, and heavy amounts of bodily damage if you try to exceed what your body is capable of at that moment. So with Saitama removing this limiter, it makes Saitama capable of literally becoming as strong as he needs and wants to be. And we get a perfect example of the growth that Saitama could have with his limiter removed in the fight between him and Cosmic Fear Garo, where we see this chart that shows both Cosmic Fear Garo's and Saitama's exponential growth, with Saitama's line being a much higher and steeper slope upwards. So seeing as how Saitama has no theoretical ceiling to his strength, this is how he's able to become far and away the strongest being in the entire One Punch Man universe without even trying. So now getting back to the question at hand here, now that we know exactly what his limiter is, how strong would Saitama be if he never removed it? Well, to answer that question, we have to look back at a couple key moments in Saitama's life while he was in his training to become the strongest person in the universe, pretty much, where we see him gradually become stronger and get closer and closer to removing his limiter. And the first instance I want to bring up here is actually the OVA episode Road to Hero. I'm not going to go into details of the whole plot of that episode. I actually have a video dedicated to that. You can click on the screen here. But in summation, Saitama is still in the middle of his training, pretty early on in his training actually, when we see the first fight that he has is this newly transformed mob boss that in all honesty doesn't seem to be much stronger than a threat level tiger, and that's giving him some credit. We see Saitama kind of struggle with him at first, but eventually he gets the upper hand on him, and I would say, you know, he comes out with a mid-diff victory in that particular case. And that leads us to our next example, which is the bonus chapter Brushing Up Yourself, where Saitama is 300 days into his training, so just a few months shy of a year, where we see him start to notice that he's becoming much stronger and much faster than he was prior to starting his training, and he's even able to stop a moving car that's about to hit a kid walking his dog, but suddenly a threat level tiger monster shows up and completely pummels him into the wall. Like, Saitama seems to stand no chance against this threat level tiger, even though it might be a pretty weak monster in the grand scheme of things. Well, at the end of that chapter, Saitama seems to break another wall, literally and metaphorically, and ends up one-shotting the threat level tiger, meaning that at that point he was probably in the area to be able to begin to approach giving a disaster level demon monster a challenge. I don't want to go as far as to say that he would win that matchup against a disaster level demon monster on his own, because he literally just got pummeled by a tiger, but I think I'd go as far as to say that he'd put up a decent fight against a disaster level demon by himself, with just that kind of giving you a decent idea of where he would lie in the hero association, what ranking he would be. I think at this point he'd at least be an A class, seeing as how the majority of A class heroes aren't capable of defeating a disaster level demon on their own. They need to be a group of A class heroes to be able to do this. And the third example I want to take a look at here, and the one that I think makes it much harder but also much easier in a way to kind of gauge Saitama's strength. It'll make a lot more sense in a second, just bear with me. But what I'm talking about here is the bonus chapter Back of My Head, where, to make a long story short, Saitama is about a year and a half into his training, so pretty much a good 6 months, 8 months after the events of Brushing Up Yourself, where Saitama is still growing, still getting stronger, and this is when he actually starts to lose some of his hair. So in order to figure out how much hair he had lost, he wants to see the back of his head and check it. But the problem is he only has one mirror in his entire house, so his whole big plan is to turn around fast enough to see the back of his head, which of course is almost impossible. Like, you'd literally be having to move it faster than the speed of light to be able to do this. Well, Saitama tries on many occasions to do so, and eventually, with one final attempt, we see Saitama power up yet again as he plants his foot in the ground and turns around with enough speed and force that, although it's not confirmed, many say that he did indeed see the back of his head that day. So this is why I kind of say this makes it easier and harder to kind of gauge how strong Saitama is at this point, because obviously if you're moving as fast or faster than the speed of light, you're pretty damn insane. Like, you're completely broken at this point. So that kind of leaves no debate there. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to gauge that whole feat or compare it to other, let's say, S-class heroes to kind of give us a good idea of whether or not he'd be at like the top of the S-class or at the bottom or something like that. I mean, we haven't seen any other character do anything remotely this crazy, so it kind of throws things up in the air a little bit. But I mean, come on guys, we don't want to overthink it, right? Like, he literally went at light speed just to see the back of his head. So if he was really in a pinch and really actually needed to survive a fight or something, he most certainly could go even beyond this point, even with his hair still. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, when the events of Brushing Up Yourself take place, I think Saitama is firmly in the A class at this point. Maybe at the bottom, maybe, you know, closer to the middle, but definitely in the A class, seeing as how he's probably able to take on a disaster level demon at this point. Maybe not win that fight, but at least put up a good enough fight to call it competitive. But fast forwarding just 8 months later into the events of Back of My Head, this is when Saitama really quite easily breaks into the S-class level of strength, where he'd most certainly be able to take out the bottom level S-class members like Puri Puri Prisoner or Tank Top Master, probably even approach Super Alloy Darkshine in terms of durability and strength. So as we kind of move up the hierarchy, I find it very hard to believe that any other S-class hero other than like Tatsumaki and Blast would be able to kind of hold their own against Saitama at this point, seeing as how he can literally move at light speed. So with that being said, I think he would most certainly be in at least the top 5 strongest members of the Hero Association, more than likely top 3 in my opinion, meaning he's stronger than the vast majority of members of the Hero Association or characters in the story in general. And if you place them in the scenario of the Monster Association raid, for example, I think he'd be able to handle most of the cadres. Once it gets to, you know, Platinum S and Homeless Emperor, you know, one of those upper echelon cadres, I think it'd be kind of challenging at that point. It'd be hard to kind of say that Saitama would be able to come out winning, even with the crazy amount of feats that he had, because we still don't know exactly how durable he is at this point, whether or not he can eat those massive blows that those upper echelon cadres can provide. So with that being said, I think he'd be in the top 10 at least strongest characters in the entire series, and specifically I think he would be S-class rank 3, just behind Tatsumaki and Blast. But what do you guys think about this? How strong do you think Saitama would be in the current manga storyline if he didn't remove his limiter? How far do you guys think he would make it in the Monster Association raid? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Maybe I overhyped him in this video, maybe I undersold him in this video. Let me know your thoughts below. I'm very curious to know. But that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful weekend. I hope this video made your day just a little bit better, and I'll see you guys in the next one.